Welcome to Hope Starts With Us, a podcast by NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And we're doing this podcast at NAMICon 2024 here in Denver, Colorado. So if you hear any background noise, we have over 1,500 people here to actually participate in NAMICon 2024. So Tom, before we start, I want to talk about why we started this podcast. We call it Hope Starts With Us. And really there's five elements of it. Hope starts with us talking about mental health. Hope starts with us making information accessible. Hope starts with us providing resources and practical advice. Hope starts with us sharing our stories, and hope starts with us breaking the stigma. Right. Hope starts with all of us. Hope is a collective, and we hope that with each episode and with each conversation, it brings people into that collective so that they know they're not alone. So speaking of that, Tom, as I was entering into the beginning of NAMICon, going into the conference room there, the conference center, you approached and said, "Hi, I just want to introduce myself," and you shared your story, and your story you shared it as the perspective as a father. And it was the story about your son and his journey as he was diagnosed with bipolar, living with bipolar. So would you share that story? And then the other part that you shared there was that family to family and your wife and the family in terms of that. So would love to hear about your son's story. And first of all, thank you for approaching me as I was entering into the conference center.
No, it was, I just wanted to approach you and introduce myself just to say thank you, because this is a wonderful event. It's fantastic. It brings the whole, or at least a significant chunk of the NAMI family together. You get to meet old friends and new faces and network, and it's just a wonderful event. And I just wanted to express my gratitude for you doing the event. And as part of that, I just explained a little bit about how I got to be involved in the organization, and it was because of my son. His story started when he was entering his senior year in high school. And, up until that point, John was like the all-American kid. He was regularly on the school's honor roll. He was involved in various sporting activities. He was really into wrestling in his senior year, and good-looking kid with a great circle of friends. And his life looked like it was on a trajectory to finish off high school, go off to college, earn a degree, go out and get a good job, and, live the American dream. However, at the beginning of that process, his senior year, the wheels seemed to fall off all of that. Before we knew what was happening, my wife and I were getting notified by the school that he was not showing up for class and not turning in his assignments and, in danger of failing not only the classes, but not graduating. And we're like, how can he not graduate? He's an honor roll student. What's happening here? And as, you already alluded to, what was happening is he was developing bipolar disorder. And that began what I describe as an 8-year-long roller coaster ride of every parent's nightmare. John was not only struggling in school and in danger of not graduating, but he was self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. He was getting in trouble with the criminal justice system. He was at times homeless during that 8-year stretch. And of course, because of the nature of the bipolar illness, he was at times so spun up with the mania that he was literally psychotic, delusional, paranoid, seeing and hearing things that weren't there, just frightening, not only for him, but also for his mother and I. And, when he wasn't psychotic and all spun up with that, he was the other side of bipolar, which was, full of suicidal ideation. And he attempted suicide, honestly, Dan, more times than I can tell you, because frankly, I lost track. But it was awful every single time. And in fact, one of those times he attempted suicide was at home in front of his two sisters, who were 3 and 5 years old at the time. And it was at that point my wife and I just said, look, John, we love you, but you can't live here. This is just way, way too much chaos. It's not healthy for the family. And I had to protect my daughters. But thankfully, right before this had happened, my wife had found out about NAMI. And she dragged me, kicking and screaming, to my first NAMI family support group. Because honestly, as a college educated person who was always a news junkie, always reading the paper and always staying up on what was going on in the world, I thought I knew everything I needed to know about mental health and substance abuse. And turns out I didn't know much at all. And it was shocking. But my wife insisted that I go. She's very, very persuasive. And so we went. And, I didn't want to go because honestly, again, I thought I knew enough. I thought I knew what I needed to know. And I didn't want to be airing my family's dirty laundry, our family's dysfunction, and bunch of a front of strangers. And honestly, it was one of the best experiences of my life because the people that I met at this support group were people just like me and my wife. They had loved ones who were struggling, not doing well. They had their concerns and were looking for help, looking for support, looking for resources. And it was just, nothing like I had imagined. And it was great too, because the facilitator of the group, the trained NAMI support group facilitator,
Yes.
also had real lived experience. This wasn't a job. This was a volunteer. They were doing it out of love and compassion for others who had been down this or starting down this road that they'd already been down.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just fantastic. And not long after attending the first family support group, I heard about the NAMI family to family class. So I ended up taking that. And that was life changing because not only did my wife and I learn about all the different types of mental health conditions,
Yes.
all their symptoms and behaviors, and learned about medications and the different types of medications that are available and what they do, as well as their side effects and limitations, and the types of different therapies that are available. But most importantly, for a family that was struggling and just didn't know where to turn, we learned about coping skills. How do we manage our own mental health and our own equilibrium while we're going through this crisis? And how do we approach our son? Because, these are brain illnesses. It's like your brain's been hijacked. And the person you're trying to help may not be able to think rationally or stay unemotional about it. They may just shut down. How do you approach someone like that? When do you approach them? When do you kind of hold back? And what is the language you should use? And what are the approaches you should use to kind of nudge them along a path to recovery? So it was really at a very dark, dark time in our lives. This was our lifesaver. It was just so impactful to our family.
Yeah, this is such an important story and what you're sharing in reference to John's journey and your family's journey. First of all, thank you. And something else you shared with me as we were walking into the conference center, you shared that was the beginning of your work with NAMI. How long have you now been giving your time and talent to NAMI?
Well, it was funny. I started going to, like I said, the support groups and taking the classes. And before I knew it, the leadership of the local affiliate, shout out to NAMI Manchester, they said, hey, you seem to be really into this. Would you like to be part of our board? And I said, this is some really great work. And, before I knew it, I was a trained family support group facilitator. The guy who didn't want to go is now helping others. And to this day, I still facilitate a NAMI family support group because it just is so important.
Thank you for doing that. And also one of the things you just mentioned, NAMI is an incredible recruiter, aren't we?
Yep.
We are one of the best recruiters in the world when it comes to recruiting folks to come in and work with us and give their time and talent. Tell us about John now.
Well, John, he was a mess for 8 years, but he had an epiphany. He decided he didn't want to live La Vida Loca anymore. And I can tell you that today he manages his own business. He owns his own home. He's married to a lovely young woman. They have one child, my first grandchild.
Congratulations,
and,
Papa.
His life regained the trajectory it had been on before he got sick.
Wow.
And I love sharing this story when I do outreach in public because honestly, people need to hear that there's hope, that these illnesses, even though they can be so critical and so frightening, they are treatable. And 80 to 90% of people with even a serious mental illness, and John was sick as anyone, can get better and can go on to lead normal lives.
Mm-hmm.
And John is just one example, one story I could share of the stories I've heard along the way. People who got involved with NAMI, were able to help their loved one, and they went on to lead, for all intents and purposes, a normal life, whatever quote unquote normal means.
So thank you so much, and congratulations to you and your family and to John. I mean, we're talking about a man who now is a parent, a business owner, a homeowner,
Yep.
and doing really well. So this is really good for a family that all of a sudden their young person has just been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. What would you tell them?
Well, run, don't walk to your local NAMI affiliate. Again, not only will you get support, but you get information, you'll get resources. And this is from people, for the most part, who are volunteers. They're not getting paid to do this. They're doing it because someone helped them along the way, and they want to give back, and they want to help others.
Yeah, this is an incredible story, and it's a story about resilience, and it's a story about recovery, and those two things are so critically important for families to know. How's your family doing now? Because there's trauma. If we talk about John as a high school student who was, like you said, honor roll student, academically doing well, involved in wrestling. He was an athlete, and all of a sudden it just flipped on its head. And the trauma that it created for the family had to be incredible. How did you guys navigate that trauma, and how is the family doing now?
Well, we all took advantage of therapies in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you bring up trauma, because in my journey as someone who took a deep dive into mental health, I feel that, especially for people who have been traumatized and have a mental health condition, the trauma-focused therapies are key.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the medical profession, some providers, think of the trauma-focused therapies, honestly, as just another tool in their toolbox, nothing special. To me, and the people I talk to who have done really well after being really, really ill, they've all availed themselves of these trauma-focused therapies that literally can diffuse the trauma. And that, I think, is really key for people. It's work. I mean, it's not easy, but it is so important. And I think that that's a message that also needs to be, widely shared, because it's just key, I think, for a lot of people's successful recoveries.
Thank you very much. And we always wrap up with one question, Tom. And the question is, the world can be a harsh place, and we know things are tough. What gives you hope?
To me, it's knowing that there are organizations like NAMI available that are there, ready, willing, and able to help, with deep knowledge of this subject matter, and just ready to be there for families that are struggling, for individuals who are struggling, in all these different ways, all these different programs, the peer programs, the caregiver programs. It's just wonderful that this organization exists. And that's the reason that I work for our state office now, because you do just such great, critically important work. And I just jumped at the chance to be a part of it.
Well, and we're so happy that you did jump in. As we wrap up, one of the things I want to do a shout out to your wife. Being someone married 42 years, and knowing that there's been times in my life where my wife has been insistent and I've been resistant.
Yep.
Kudos to your wife. Yep. Kudos to your wife in insisting, because we as men, if we can just talk about this in the wrap up, as men, one, we kind of don't like to share. We think that whatever is happening with us, that it's happening just with us, and we don't need help. We can figure it out.
Exactly.
And for your wife to be so insistent and to pull you along was just wonderful. And kudos to her.
Yeah, no, she's the love of my life, and I'm so glad she insisted.
Well, thank you for sharing your story while we're here at NAMICon 2024 and here in Denver, Colorado. And have a wonderful time at the conference.
I'm having a great time so far.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You.
We do say something to our audience at the very end. This has been Hope Starts With Us, a podcast by NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. If you are looking for mental health resources, you're not alone. To connect with the NAMI helpline and find local resources, visit NAMI.org/help. Text helpline to 62640 or dial 800-950-6264 or NAMI. Or if you are experiencing an immediate suicide, substance use, or mental health crisis, please call or text 988 to speak with the trained support specialist or visit 988lifeline.org. This has been NAMI's podcast. My name is Dan Gillison. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching.